Whoopi Goldberg's booming voice reverberated across the ABC studio as the cameras stopped rolling during a taping of The View. The moderator's eyes narrowed on a woman holding up a phone, clearly recording despite being told multiple times that audience members were prohibited from filming. As the security team rushed over, gasps erupted from the crew and other stunned audience members. It was none other than Meghan Markle herself, defiantly recording away with a smirk on her face as if she was above the rules. "Meghan Markle, you put that phone away right now or so help me." Whoopi thundered, nostrils flaring with barely contained rage. "I don't care if you fancy yourself part of the royal family still. In this studio, you follow our rules like everyone else." But the Duchess of Sussex remained defiant, continuing to film as the burly security guards approached her seat in the audience section. "I have a First Amendment right to record. This is oppression of truth and democracy." Meghan cried out dramatically, her voice dripping with overdramatic indignation. The irony of a wealthy British royal lecturing about American civil values and freedoms was not lost on Whoopi, who let out a bark of derisive laughter that cut through the tension like a whip crack. "Oh please. Oppression? Girl, don't even start with that entitled nonsense," the comedienne scolded. "You're just mad you can't monetize our show without permission like you desperately tried to do with every other endeavor." As the security guards tried to physically confiscate the constantly filming Meghan's phone, she jerked away violently while letting out a theatrical gasp of horror. "How dare you lay hands on a princess to accost and assault? I'll have every one of you jobless on the streets for this injustice." Whoopi could barely speak through her uproarious laughter at this preposterously grandiose outburst of narcissistic delusion. "Princess?" she finally sputtered out, buckling over as the punchline hit her gut. "Honey, you ain't been a real princess since you got kicked out of the palace and traded in your titles for a professional victim complex. Now get her royally entitled backside tossed out of here before I have her charged with trespassing and resisting arrest." Meghan let out a piercing shriek of indignation that rattled every ear in the studio as the security guards firmly grabbed her flailing arms to physically remove her from the audience seating area. As they dragged the still recording Duchess out of the studio doorway, her entitled rants about oppressive police brutality and revolutionary modern rights could be heard clearly echoing throughout the ABC corridors. Back on set, Whoopi raised a calming hand to quiet the whispering audience who were still reeling in shock at the chaotic scene that had just unfolded before their eyes. The unflappable host paused for a beat to allow them all to collect themselves before speaking. "Girl's got a real delusional persecution complex thinking the basic rules of society don't apply equally to her," she said, shaking her head with an amused chuckle. "What's next? She gonna claim we tried to unlawfully detain her kids or stage an international kidnapping attempt?" The audience roared with laughter at the comedienne's perfectly timed quip, finally allowing the unshakable host to proceed with resuming taping with some semblance of normalcy and peace restored to the studio. All except for Meghan's still audible muffled shouts of racial injustice, continuing to emanate from the lobby area outside as various ABC staff struggled to remove the obstreperous Duchess from the premises. "Great, here we go again with pulling the race card over being held accountable," Whoopi sighed, rolling her eyes. "As I've been trying to teach people for decades, being treated equally under the law isn't racist persecution no matter how privileged you think you are." The sage host paused to allow the laughter and applause from the entertained audience to die down before continuing to address Meghan's unsubstantiated claims of discriminatory mistreatment. "Listen, I've experienced more actual racism over my lifetime than that wealthy former royal could even begin to comprehend with all her willful self-victimization delusions. Expecting the bare minimum of common decency from public conduct isn't discriminatory brutality no matter how much dramatic histrionics she tries spewing for attention." Whoopi shook her head sadly and raised her palms in a helpless shrug as Meghan's voice continued bellowing indistinctly about oppressive security suppressing her truth to society out in the hallway. "This is exactly why the monarchy's better off without her representing them," the comedienne proclaimed to a smattering of agreeing hoots and applause. "Any institution should quickly rid itself of any members completely unprincipled enough to abuse their platform by shamelessly chasing scandal just to remain culturally relevant as professional outrage baiters." After savoring the audience's uproarious reaction approvingly for a few seconds, Whoopi turned back towards the studio cameras with a mischievous grin spreading across her face. Well, so much for starting off today's show with a thoughtful discussion on America's continued racial struggles and progress. She deadpanned to a fresh wave of laughter and catcalls. Instead, it seems we've been treated to a live demonstration of what narcissistic privilege looks like from a woman so woefully out of touch. She's resorted to peddling perpetual makeshift scandals to feed her never-ending delusions. Meghan's muffled indignant squawking had finally grown distant enough to allow Whoopi to segue seamlessly into the first prepared segment for the day's broadcast addressing former President Obama's recently published memoirs. As the studio audience settled in with expectant hushes, Whoopi leveled her legendary comedic timing with one final surgical zinger aimed squarely at the delusional Duchess's antics. Now maybe once we're done exploring actual substance and significance from a truly influential world figure, we'll circle back to finding Meghan a dignified reality show where she can pitch her made-for-TV persecuted princess performative protests over something inconsequential like the proper cream cheese to caviar ratios on taxpayer-funded crudite platters. The howls of raucous laughter and cheers that erupted throughout the studio following this quip could have likely still reached Meghan's ears even from the parking garage she was inevitably being hauled towards. Clearly, Whoopi Goldberg was not about to tolerate her show being hijacked by entitled misbehavior, no matter what misguided delusions of grandeur the perpetrator harbored about their self-importance.